All right, so my name is Dan Farrell. I am a collaboration architect at SMP, and I focus a lot on emerging technologies. And today we're going to be talking about Webex Calling. Now, if you've attended one of my previous sessions, the Webex Calling content is similar, but it's not exactly the same. We're going to go through an overview. As always, we'll talk about the collaboration challenges and benefits of moving to cloud. But then we're going to actually take a turn at probably right around like 45 minutes or so and dive a little bit deeper than we ever have before. The one thing I would say is this is more of a general presentation outlining Webex Calling. I do have a lot of content that is general. If you would like this to be tailor-made for your organization and your use cases and stuff like that, we can certainly do that. All right. So with that, we're going to talk first off, and I'll go over the agenda like always. So collaboration trends and challenges, as well as why we should move to the cloud. Then we're going to do an overview, true overview, 30,000 foot view of Webex Calling. Then I'm going to dive deep. I'm not going to dive extremely deep, but we're going to do deeper dive than we've ever done before. Talk about next steps, and then we'll wrap it up. So in the collaboration world, in 2020, where everything is the big question mark, the issue becomes, how do we streamline collaboration? We have students working remotely that have never worked remote, some of them as young as 5, all the way up to enterprises who may or may not have done remote work. So how do we streamline that? And then on top of that, there's a giant trend to move to cloud, not just for calling, but everything out there. So is it a trend that makes sense? Why should I look at the cloud? Or why should I not? The trend to move to cloud is really about agility. Then there's also the contact center portion of it as well. So the cloud calling is more the dial tone, the video call point to point, and then the contact center is truly that. You know, you're taking calls inbound, you have agents, and it has a lot more advanced capabilities. Today, we're going to be focusing on that beige circle around cloud calling. And then there's video that goes with it, and is true with the Cisco platform. Video is built right in. And then how do we interoperate? So there's no surprise out there that most people are not Cisco end-to-end. And even if you are Cisco end-to-end, how do we integrate and interoperate with what you have today? It could be a learning management system. It could be an ERP. It could be anything that your business uses, or even a CRM, right? So with that comes the challenges that I have multiple platforms. There's not one customer out there that has just one. So we understand that. And then there's operational overhead with a lot of the PBXs out there, or even the communication managers of the world. There's a lot that it can do. So there's a lot of complexity. And that has been a challenge for people as they're trying to be agile and trying to spin up people working remote, new branches being shut or opened and old branches being shut down, et cetera. And then again, interoperability is definitely a challenge. It's nice to talk about it, but how do you actually do it? And since I have so many platforms and I need to interoperate, how do I make sure that my experience is the same? A disjointed experience for an employee is a really #1 way to kill productivity, efficiency, and overall desire of that customer or that employee to be working. And then it also destroys adoption. So how do we maintain these things? And then while we're doing all that, how do we ensure that we're compliant? Business is moving so fast right now. It's really great that we might be able to spin services up, but are they secure? Can people just show up randomly in the middle of a meeting and say whatever they want? Can people barge into your phone calls? These are important items, especially as we look at the future of 2020, future of 2021, and what's going to exist moving forward. And then lastly, it's no surprise out there, a lack of agility hurts businesses. And as we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, it's extremely important that you're able to shift at any moment. We're talking about survival of businesses at this point. So agility is not just something and saying, hey, I want that new amazing feature out there and I want to turn it on quick. That's important. But how do I make sure this technology can ship quickly to make sure my business can remain profitable and in business? So those are things that we've been seeing a lot. And because of the fact that there's so much complexity out there in the existing systems, 70% of people and with what's going on need to reduce spending, and they want to do so by going to the cloud. The IT leaders see it as a crucial item moving to the cloud to help with agility and digital transformation. And then it also helps people work remotely. And then these are a few other items out there. So the remote workforce, that's no surprise out there. There's point solutions that we need to bring under one umbrella, and that creates disjointed experiences. And with that comes additional cost, complexity to administrate that. And then we need to make sure that when you're buying all this stuff, that you actually maintain investment protection and do so securely. So why move to the cloud? First off, you get a single platform. That's extremely important. You're going to decrease complexity and the ability to actually keep your system online by you just migrating to the cloud itself. You're going to get hard cost savings, and you're going to get extended ROI. So some of them may be initial, right when you buy the system. You're going to see savings possibly on your PSTN, so your actual phone service. And some of them are going to be with your employees where they can do things quicker and more agile. So you're going to have savings there. Steps, every click that's saved is time saved. Right? So when you start looking at moving to the cloud, it's all about how to make it easy and how to make it agile. And then on top of that, you get risk reduced because of the complexity. And then you're going to get native integrations. And then lastly, the unified experience. So this is going to be the overview section of Webex Calling. Cisco calls it calling without compromise. So what is Webex Calling? And if you've been in my previous sessions, the next 2 slides you have seen before, but they're still relevant. So Webex Calling is Cisco's cloud-based PBX and operates over the top, meaning that dial tone and signaling go across the internet. Today, that is the only way that it is done. It's managed exclusively through Webex Control Hub. It is the Cisco Spark Call replacement, and it is targeted for 1,000 or less users, but there is no platform minimum or maximum. That's a fun typo. There's no maximum amount here. So it's not like after you get to 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 users, the platform is unstable. It absolutely works just fine. There are people with tens of thousands of users on this platform. It's just targeted for this area. If you have an extremely complex dial plan, a global footprint, and all that other thing that could go with it, there's also another platform out there called UCM Cloud, which we also talk about in depth in another session. And that platform may be more for you if you have the 3,000 plus users. If not, Webex Calling can be used with a call manager. It can be used in replacement of a call manager. But getting into what Webex Calling is it's not Webex meetings or Webex events like we're on today. And then there's also a Webex Support Center, and there's also Webex Training Center. And then a quick plug on there, Webex Training Center, if you're not aware, a lot of the features are going to be pulled right into the next release of Webex meetings. So Training Center will eventually go away. But the point is that Webex Calling is just not another meeting platform. It's truly a phone system. It's not a replacement for the call manager, though, so CUCM or Unified Communications Manager, because it's not a legacy or end-of-life platform. But for a lot of people, the complexity that goes with the robustness of call manager is just no longer required. And if that's for you, it can be a replacement. But call manager is not going end of life in lieu for UCM Cloud or Webex Calling. The pedigree and 20-year leadership that exists with call manager still exists today. And that investment is being infused into the UCM Cloud and as well into Webex Calling that we're talking about today. Webex Calling isn't a contact center. There is a Webex contact center. There are also some queuing capabilities within this platform, which are very robust, but this platform is not a contact center. And it's not just another rebranding of Spark Call. and it's not PSTN delivery by Cisco. But what it is, WebEx is a single platform, which does give you the call, message, meet, everything out there. So WebEx is a platform now. It's not just a meeting engine that it used to be. It's a global worldwide network. And what that allows us to do is have a complete collaboration experience under this umbrella. Now, if you don't have Cisco end-to-end, that's okay. If you might have chosen another chat service, we can certainly integrate to it. But the point is here that WebEx calling is a complete experience. You can have call, message, meet, everything under one umbrella. And pretty much every feature that you could want is out there. It's not, if this platform is not lacking features. And the ones that need to be enhanced are being enhanced, and we'll talk about some of the roadmap items. And there's a lot more coming that I just can't discuss right now because they're under NDA. But if we get an NDA with Cisco, we can talk about some really awesome things that are coming in the next 6 months. Right? And with that, you get trust and reliability, 99.9949's uptime. Security is paramount. It's built right into the platform from the ground up. So it's not something that's bolted on later. It's not an additional license. It's there by default. All these data centers are geo-redundant, and I'll get you some more specifics on the actual data centers. And then there's also global support. So in the event that you have multiple locations, how do we actually tackle that? There's an answer for that too. There's 84 markets across the globe. It's governed in one of 7 supported currencies. The UI and the actual user experience can be customized depending on where you are. And partner support is in multiple languages. And here's a quick overview of all the countries. And the way this green, yellow, red works is if you're working with SMP to deploy WebEx calling, you can look at either of these green and yellow items. The only difference between the green and yellow is that we cannot sell, SMP cannot sell into these countries. But if you have a location that are in these countries, we can sell on the US or one of these other supported countries, no problem. So we can dive into that a little bit more. Point is that as long as your locations are in the green or yellow, we have no problem. If you have something in the red, unfortunately, these countries are on such a lockdown that there's just no way to actually get this here. All right, so as far as what the data centers actually look like, here they are right now, and Cisco's adding a lot on a regular basis, right? So we have multiple data centers throughout the United States and Canada, and then we have London and Frankfurt, and then the 2 in Japan have just recently stood up, and then we also have a couple in Australia. And there are more on the roadmap. And again, the 5 nines, which means less than 5 minutes unavailability each month, which is standard for most cloud services out there. But again, the security is pretty much unrivaled out there. So here's a couple examples of the security that's actually built right in. And I'm not going to really dive too much into it. The point is that if you're concerned about security because of the fact that this is a cloud product, don't be. There's white papers and a ton of data behind this. So don't worry about that at this point. So as far as bring your own PSTN flexibility, and we're going to dive more into these in the in-depth section, SMP can offer you one of 2 options, a local gateway and cloud-connected PSTN. So the local gateway is going to be bringing a Cisco ISR router or a CSR that's a virtual router, and you'll be able to utilize your existing PSTN services that you have today, whether they're an analog line, a PRI, or SIP trunks. We can terminate directly into an on-site gateway. If you'd like to move everything to the cloud and you want nothing on site, we can absolutely fulfill that as well as through what's called Cloud Connected PSTN. There are currently 4 providers out there. I'm not going to dive into each one of those right now, but when we get into the dialing constructs of this platform and how it operates, that'll be a lot more relevant for you, right? And then we talked about a unified experience. And you're going to see a couple different versions of this because the Webex application or Webex Teams, it has a little bit of a facelift coming, so I'll show you when we get to that slide. But the point is here that this one experience, this one piece of software can be your soft phone, your video phone, your chat client, and your meetings platform. Right? So we don't have to worry about having 5 different applications on your desktop. You can boil it all down to one. And this platform is also going to be able to be modular in the next few weeks, actually. So the modularity will allow us to pick and choose what portions of the application are exposed to each end user. So in the event that you have a chat service and you don't want to use the Webex chat service, no problem, we can shut that off and just make it a calling only application. Right? So this unified application allows you to have a consistent experience, and it mirrors the experience that we have on-premise with Jabber. So the experience looks very similar. All right. So a couple of the key elements are the fact that it's obviously packed with features and functionality. It's an all-in-one package, and it's built on top of Webex, the number 54% market share of the world's favorite collaboration suite. And when we look at the entire portfolio that we have to offer when we talk about Webex, so we have Webex Calling, which is what we're talking about today. Webex Teams, which is Cisco's end-to-end encrypted chat service, which allows a lot of rich integrations with Microsoft, Google, integrations with OneDrive, Google Drive, Box, those types of things, and it allows you to have video communications as well. And then on top of that, we also have Webex Meetings. And Webex Meetings is a very popular, very robust, very rich platform. And if you're unaware, the next release of Webex 40.9, which comes out in September, if you are a Webex customer, we will be talking to you shortly. If the communications haven't gone out, I've been out for the past week, so I apologize, they might have gone out. If not, we're going to be reaching out. 40.9 has a visible facelift on Webex, so get ready. And if you want to know more about that, feel free in the survey to fill that in, and we'll certainly provide you that data as well if you're not a current Webex customer with SMP. Right, so the way we look at this here is we can give you Webex calling, and then Webex Teams comes included. You can choose to use it, you can choose not to. That's completely on you. It's your call, and we can talk to you about why you should consider it. There's a few different ways that Cisco actually tackles chat, especially when we talk about external chat outside of your company, maximizing your company's security, and all sorts of things that we'll get into. And then on top of that, because it is a calling platform, there are phones available, physical phones. There are headsets available that Cisco makes, and video devices. All right, so, and we talked about, again, this is all managed through Webex Control Hub. And with that benefit of everything being on Webex Control Hub, we have a common identity. So if you're logging into Webex Meetings, Teams, or Calling, your login is identical all the way through. All right, and then when we talk about licensing, there are 2 major types of licensing in Webex Calling. There is the enterprise license and a common area. And the way it breaks down is if you're an employee, you get an enterprise license, which entitles you to all the PBX features that you saw on that one slide, as well as Webex Teams. Webex Meetings is an optional add-on on top of that. Again, it's associated with a person. So the way that works is that employee gets up to 5 devices. It could be 5 physical phones, it could be 5 virtual, it could be a combination of both. Right? And we have applications available for tablets, phones, PC, Mac, and there's even a web client as well. And then for locations that are not people, there's the common area license, which allows dial tone effectively. So for things like a lobby phone, a conference phone, a video device, or pretty much anything that's not associated with a person. And when we start talking about emergency calling, so there's Emergency calling and lawful intercept. I'm not going to dive terribly deep into this because there's one other slide I want to get into. But the point is that regardless of where this platform is deployed, it's going to follow the regulations of that country, right? So when you dial 911 out of Webex Calling, it's going to be compliant to Carrie's law. We'll get an email that actually notifies the administration staff. Everything will be compliant there. As far as lawful intercept, it is compliant as well. And then here's this is kind of an eye chart, and we're going to skip that for now. If you have some advanced requirements, especially if you're in K-12 or you have offices that are being open and shut on a regular basis, depending on where they are, Red Sky is actually a really great solution for you. And this will allow updated automation of your devices. So in the event that you have a phone that's moving from location to location, the 911 location address will update automatically without you having to do much of anything. You can give it some additional information for very granular specifics, but if not, it'll update itself on the back end. So here's a quick example of the differences between Webex Calling by default versus Webex Calling with Red Sky. And Red Sky, again, is a third-party solution which would bolt on top of Webex Calling. So for our customers who have those really rich requirements, here's a quick pie chart for you. All right, so that's it as far as an overview. Now we're going to dive deeper. We're doing great on time. All right. So clients and devices. So Webex Teams, and I told you that there was a little bit of a visual overhaul. Here's what the next generation of the client is going to look like. We have a new updated UI across the top. If you have Webex Teams today installed on a mobile device, you'll notice this is very consistent and it's being brought down to the desktop. So you'll have a consistent experience. You're going to be able to, and well, you already can register Webex Teams directly to your communication manager or UCM or Webex Calling. There is a standalone calling application that I'm not going to talk about right now because as Webex Teams gains a modularity capability, that product will go away because there won't be any reason for it. This platform allows high quality enterprise calling. Mid-call controls are available, everything that you would expect, right? And it allows us to support soft phone and desk phone control. Now, what it looks like, and I apologize, these are a little bit lower resolution. You have a mobile application over here, and then you have an actual calling application. And I have one on my desktop. If we have time at the end, I'll go in and give you a live demo of it. This is what it looks like. You hit the calling button and you can pick, any different option out there. As far as IP phones are concerned, we have available options that are from the basic line of the 6800 to the 8800 series. So if you're not familiar with the 6800 because you have a call manager today, these phones are not supported on anything but a cloud system. So we cannot put these on the communication manager. There's a lot of reasons why. The primary reason is the fact that these were designed to be lower cost phones, so they do not have the storage capacity to handle firmware for call manager, frankly. But there's one phone specifically that I want to dive into. This is the 6851. This is a very nice phone. It feels great. It doesn't feel cheap. This phone, it just only has a 10100 switch port on it, but what it does offer is expansion capabilities. This is really good for somebody working from home. And then there's also another option, the 6861, which looks exactly like this, but it doesn't have a switch port. It has a Wi-Fi NIC built into it. So for our people working from home, it ships with a power brick and Wi-Fi, and you don't have to worry about it. One of the things that we've noticed as people have been moving and the work from home movement is a lot of people overlook the home user's location from, first of all, power of the phone itself, and then second of all, how to actually get that into the network. So where is that Ethernet port on that user's network? Sometimes they're not even on the same part of the building. Sometimes you have people who are renting or people who you have an apartment or a townhome where they can't drill, they can't run Ethernet cables, there's nothing that they can do. So you're kind of at a crossroads here. And the 6861, which again looks exactly like this, would be a perfect example, a perfect answer for that. Then there's also the 7800 series. This is the same 7800 series that are available on-prem as are the 8800 series. The only phones that are not supported, if you have ones on-prem today, are the 8821, which is a Wi-Fi phone, and the 8831, which is a conference room phone. Right, so now we have an intelligent device for every space. We have all the phones across the bottom that we talked about, plus the headsets. So I'll get into the headsets in a moment. But all the video devices that you know and love from Cisco are available and supported on Webex Calling. So as you go to deploy these, you just change your dial tone to be provided by Webex Calling. And as we talked about before, everything is secure here. Okay? So your PCI, HIPAA, GDPR compliance, everything else that's out there, it's available. We can talk to you about compliancy and what it actually means to be compliant. So HIPAA, for example, is one of those sticky subjects, and we could dive into that if you're HIPAA regulated. Right? Now, if you have Call Manager today and you have 7800 and 8800 series phones, we can reuse those phones. 99% of the time, we can reuse them, no problem. There are a couple catches on very, very old Gen 1 phones, the first released phones. And I believe I have a slide in here about that, and we can talk to you about how to actually get there. But if you have 7800 and 8800 series phones, and again, that aren't an 8831 or the 8821, we can reuse them. And on top of that, as people are working from home, headsets are very important. The contact centers are becoming a very important thing. And as always, the Cisco headsets work with this platform. I'm just going to make this full screen to make the other stuff go away. All right, and then there is also the Webex Room phone. If you're not familiar with this, this is Cisco's newest conference room phone. It utilizes the same technologies that the Touch 10 has to offer on the video and puts that right into the phone itself. There's HDMI port in and out. It can act as digital signage, gives you all the HD audio that you would like, expansion capabilities. It's a great product. So point is that all your conference rooms, whether they're video enabled or not, can have a consistent user experience. And then there's also the new Webex Desk Pro. This is really a C-suite or a high-end huddle space solution. You can think of this as a Webex board on your desk. So it's a 4K display. It has touch capabilities, whiteboarding capabilities. It has speaker tracking irrespective. If you stand up, it'll pan right up to you because a lot of people are working from home and then you just stand up. It'll work for that. It's got the RoomKit Mini's impressive soundbar audio capabilities built right in. And there's actually a pen that goes on the side with a magnetic mount, so you can do all your whiteboarding. And if you have a laptop that has USB-C, you can plug this thing right in and it'll charge your laptop up to, I believe, 86 watts, and it can act as a second display as well. Right? But again, if you have those older phones, or I'm sorry, if you have an 8800 or 7800 series phone that are on Call Manager today, we can absolutely reuse those, and we can migrate them right over to the cloud, which gives you a consistent experience, and everything is very close to near parity to your Call Manager too. So as far as retraining of users, there are a couple items that we'll need to retrain, but overall, Cisco has been working overtime to be able to give a consistent experience on-prem and in the cloud. And where there are feature gaps, Cisco is closing those quickly. If you have a phone that is on-prem, we can migrate it, and there is a license that is required. But if you have a flex plan, you get that license for free. If you don't have a flex plan, we need to get you onto a flex plan, realistically. This is a cloud-based service, so it's only available as a subscription model. There are two ways to get people Webex calling. There's the flex bundle, which we'll talk about toward the end, which is the recommended path. Then there's also the Cisco Webex Work Bundle. And the Webex Work Bundle doesn't include the migration license, whereas the Flex agreement does. So one of the things that I would like to do with you is work through your specific use case, look through your phones, and help you know what the actual cost to migrate is. And one of these items, the phone migration, will be another one of those things, whether we need to replace phones or migrate the phones over with licensing. And I can help work through you with your team on that one. And then what it looks like once we actually go to the cloud is there's a few different ways to actually activate a phone. This is just one of my favorite ways. To your end users, you can actually send an email invite, which has a 16-digit code. The user is able to unbox and power the phone up. They type in the 16-digit code and it just works. There's other ways that we can pre-provision, use MAC addresses, etc. So we require 0 end user activation whatsoever. But this is just a really nice process. And this process has worked so well that they've actually brought it on-prem as well. So if you have a communication manager and you'd like to know how to utilize a similar activation code on board, reach out to us on that too. So how this works is an admin would actually go into Webex Control Hub. They'd activate a device for a user. Then Webex Calling reaches out to the Global Discovery Service for an activation code. And then Webex Calling basically stores that code and then sends it out to the administrator or to the end user, depending on how you'd like to have that done. And again, there's a couple different ways. We've done it both ways. With activation codes, we can email it right to the end user. We could store them all and download them all as a CSV file. So if you have somebody going through an office, they can get all the 16-digit codes, or we could just use MAC addresses. But obviously with MAC addresses, you have to have MAC address collection. So there's a little bit of overhead there. So that's the reason why GDS is a fantastic solution. We'll skip that one. So let's talk about PSTN options again. This is where we're going to dive a little bit more into it than we did before. So key things to be aware of is Cisco does not provide PSTN, never provides PSTN. We have to get PSTN from either your existing carrier or through the cloud connected PSTN. PSTN is required for anything that's off-net calling between enterprises. So today, if you have two companies that are using Webex Calling, two separate companies, it's not going to utilize the Webex backbone to call between those. It will still use the PSTN. There's some enhancements coming down the road, but right now that's how it works. And then anytime that you need to call outside of your company in general, you have to use the PSTN. The PSTN dial plan does support E164. That is the recommendation. And then emergency calls and lawful intercept are the responsibility of your carrier. So again, this is what SMP has to offer, the local gateway and cloud connected. There is a service provider offer as well. I don't have that on this slide because I can't sell it to you, first of all. And second of all, we don't recommend it. Because we do partner with some service providers if we need to actually sell it through a service provider. But the one thing is, the more eggs that you put into one basket, the more difficult it becomes to actually have any negotiation capabilities. So using the local gateway will allow you to utilize your existing trunks anyway, or if you want to migrate to the cloud, to do that, effectively all your services are in the cloud. And we'll dive into the actual dial plan in a moment. We can utilize multiple carriers across multiple locations. It can be a combination of that local gateway and cloud connected PSTN. And I said there was 4 different cloud connected PSTN providers. We can only have 1 per location, but we can have as many as we want across our locations. So getting into the cloud connected a little bit more. So we have 2 different providers in this example. So you have provider X and provider Y. And then Cisco has a peering network with them. So what would happen is we would assign a provider to a location, and then it would just go right out that provider. Right? So I have better diagrams in this, so I'm going to skip that. Here we go. So enterprise dial plan. Let's talk about that real quick. We have the ability to use a steering digit for PSTN calls. For example, 9 to dial out, while maintaining compliance for carrier's law. right? So Carey's law dictates that a user must be able to dial 911 without a steering digit. So without a digit to say which one's external. So for example, if you use 8 for your steering digit and you would traditionally do 8 and then you dial your PSTN number, you would still have to be able to dial 911 directly. And that will be built hard-coded into this platform. You will not be able to shut it off. It is there by default. Now your system will also recognize 8911. So if a user were to do that, for example, that's completely fine. But you have the ability to determine a steering digit. You do not have to set a steering digit. It's just an option. There is permissive dialing, both with or without an access code. So you can allow people, if they're going to dial a specific number, to have an access code to be able to dial that, or it will reject the call. We can determine who's allowed to receive specific calls and who's allowed to send specific calls. And we can set prefix links for each site as well as extension ranges. Right, so how does it look if I have a local gateway? So here I am, customer A, and I have a local gateway. So this is my site. So I'm going to pick up my phone and I'm going to dial a phone number. It's going to go up to the Webex cloud, and Webex Calling will send that call. Anything that does not match the internal dial plan of Webex Calling to the local gateway. If it were to match and say, hey, it's another phone within my company, it will send it right back down to that site, to that phone. If not, everything else is going to get routed to that gateway. And then from there, the gateway is just going to route it out the PSTN. Now that PSTN gateway may be dedicated or co-resident. So if you have an existing Cisco ISR router that's already a border element, we can certainly reuse that. That's not a problem. Now, if we have multiple local gateways, you can only assign one gateway per site. Now, you can have high availability, so you can have 2 gateways at one site. That's totally supported at this point. But you cannot have more than one local gateway that's not in a high availability pair at a specific site. Right, so how does this look? We just had a call. I picked up my phone. I am at location 2, and I dialed my phone number. It's going to go right through the local gateway. In this scenario, it's actually a secondary site. So it's completely okay for you to share. Like we just showed up here, location 1 and location 2 are using the same local gateway. That's totally supported. You can have a local gateway per location. Again, you can have multiple local gateways at a single location, but you're not going to be able to mix and match. Now, if you have call manager or a PBX as well, it's not a call manager, you can, again, pick up your phone. Webex Calling will notice that it's not a match to the existing dial plan, so we'll send it down to the local gateway. Then the local gateway can be configured to send it right over to call manager, to your UCM. And then from there, your UCM can determine where it needs to go, whether it goes out a local gateway, it goes out a PSTN gateway, it gets directed to a UCM phone. It doesn't matter. And this happens pretty seamlessly. So again, what will happen, you pick up the phone, you dial, Webex Calling says it doesn't match me, send it to the local gateway. The local gateway then would have the specific actual patterns in it, and it would match and it would send it right over to the call manager, for example. And then the call manager would say, hey, I know exactly where that phone is. 5002 is over here on my system, send it right over to that, or it can send it right to the PSTN, right? So it looks like a lot of steps, but it actually happens in near real time. All right, so why should I migrate my PSTN trunks to the cloud? One example is the fact that this dial plan becomes a lot more straightforward. So if I'm going to dial PSTN number here, I pick up my phone, goes to the Webex Calling says, hey, it's not on my dial plan, so it needs to go out to the PSTN. And then from there, it goes through the peering network right out to the provider. Right, so it's very straightforward. There's no hairpin or anything of that nature. We just go up and out. Now, we can, again, the same way that we have local gateways, we can share a provider across multiple locations. You can have a provider at each location, but you cannot have 2 different providers at one location. right? So it says one and only one provider must be at each location. That's what we just said. And then you can have multiple locations use the same provider. And this is what it really looks like. So you can follow each one. So if I'm at location 1, I pick up my phone, I dial out, and location 1, you see here it's CCP A. It's just an example, provider A. It'll go right out provider A trunk. If I'm at location 2, up here it says I'm at CCP A, so provider A, I'll go right out to provider A. If I'm at location 2, I'm assigned the provider B, so I will just go right out the B trunk. But again, the nice thing that's right here is you have nothing on site other than the phones if you want them. And then everything is hanging off the Webex cloud. So as your users are moving from location to location, you're not having to hairpin calls by putting a gateway on-prem. So for integration to call manager. So if you have a UCM, it has to be through a local gateway. Today, we cannot use the cloud-connected PSTN because there's no SBC effectively with that. There is on the peering network, but if you want to integrate to a call manager, you're going to need a local gateway. That's the most important thing on that slide. So as far as dial plan is concerned, this is the only slide that I have on dial plan, but I have a ton more data on dial plans. So if you want to go deep dive into dial plans, let me know. And we can certainly have that discussion. We can do a presentation, we can do whiteboarding sessions, whatever makes sense for you. Your extension dials can be between 2 and 6 digits. By default, they're 4. Your location code can be up to 15 digits. I would recommend less than that. It's E164. Then for US, Canada, Puerto Rico, it's 10-digit dial national or 1 plus 10-digit. 7-digit dial is normalized. And then other countries depend, ultimately based on the national numbering plan. So you might ask, well, Dan, when I move to the cloud, now I have to worry about everything being in the cloud. So how do I keep that alive? What happens in a survivable state? How does that work? Is there an SRST gateway? I'm used to that concept. So there is no SRST gateway with Webex calling. And what an SRST gateway is, if you're not familiar, with our premise solution, you can have a gateway on site that can act effectively as a PBX, routing calls in the event that it loses communication access to the communication manager. Because everything here is in the cloud, the survivability really is multifaceted. The first thing that you need to think about is your internet connection. The Webex platform itself is inherently redundant. We talked about each data center within itself is redundant, and then each geography is actually redundant as well. And then the PSTN service is also something you should think about for redundancy. So when we dive in, oh, sorry, I went backwards there. So first thing, we talked about the internet here. It's a cloud service, so internet connectivity is key. You need to have a redundant link. If you don't have a redundant link and you have no PSTN connectivity, you have no ability for that phone to get out, there's nothing, it's not going to work, right? So we recommend a redundant link or a cellular failover. The other thing that you should be aware of is that we talked about the enterprise license. So if a user were to have a phone that has LTE and your physical phone is connected and your internet trunk fails at your location and you don't have a secondary site, or maybe your secondary carrier fails, not a big deal in that scenario for most people because they can pick up their phone, they have LTE on it, and then they just load the Webex calling application on their phone or Webex Teams, and then it's just you're working business as usual, right? So that's another option for you too. But when we're talking about survivability for PSTN, you have 2 scenarios, one with a local gateway, which is dependent upon an internet connection because, again, it has a tie back to the Webex cloud. There's also now the ability to support the border elements of Cube, so that router acting as a SIP gateway, whether it's physical or virtual, does not matter. We can operate in high availability, so if one were to fail, the other one can pick up. If we're using cloud connected PSTN, redundancy is in the cloud itself. So again, your redundancy of your internet trunks is going to be vital. And then the platform. I just said the data centers are redundant in each geography. and there's redundancy in the actual access layer, SBC within the cloud itself, within Webex. There's a whole bunch of data. We're not going to get in that much in depth, but if you want to know more about it, please let me know. We have all the data available. If we do not have the data available, we know the people at Cisco to get that level of granularity. Whatever is required to check your box, we have that data. And then for endpoints, every physical phone or soft phone registers to the cloud, right? So easy hard phone replacement. You could have SmartNet on it. You could have a sparing policy, no problem. We talked about access codes. It's as easy as deleting an old phone and adding a new phone with an activation code. Or we know the MAC address and we can just pre-provision it and it just turns right up, no problem. But the key, again, is an internet connection. If you don't have an internet connection, it will not work. Now, one of the benefits that Cisco has in comparison to every other vendor out there, Cisco makes the phones, the software, and even the video systems. So Cisco's industry-leading video systems can register right to Webex Calling, right to the Webex Cloud. And that will allow you to have everything that you know and love about your Webex products, your Webex devices, but with dial tone to the cloud. We administer everything through Webex Control Hub. We talked about that before. There's some serious overhauls that are happening to Webex Control Hub that I cannot talk to you about yet, but they're very awesome. So if you want to know more about them, let us know, and we can get an NDA session hooked up. Webex Control Hub is going to be a collaboration hub. It's not just for Webex anymore. So your communication manager, if you have one, there's going to be some stuff for communication manager that's going to be pulled right into Webex Control Hub. We manage everything through this pane of glass. So when we say unified experience, it's truly that. You can manage Webex calling, Webex meetings, event center, training center, support center, hybrid services, hybrid calling, your users, your call manager, literally everything is going to be touching this platform if it's not already. And what that allows you to do is to have true visibility end to end of your collaboration solution. So if you want to know more about that too, let me know. Now there is a platform behind the platform, so to speak. So there's what's called the Webex Calling Admin Portal. Some people call it CAP. And what CAP was when Cisco acquired BroadSoft, that was their management platform. The majority of the features have been pulled out of that platform and put into Control Hub, but there is a roadmap to get the rest of them there. So if you ever see anything about it, don't worry. By the end of the year, it will not exist. Everything is going into Control Hub. I'm not going to talk about that, but what I wanted to do is talk to you about the features. So this is an older view, but this is what it actually looks like. You configure all your features through here. Skip these slides here. Now the Webex Calling Self-Care Portal. Right now it's powered through the legacy portal. It's going to be pulled into the newer portal, and you'll have a consistent experience, but your end users have a tremendous amount of control over their own experience. And that makes it a lot easier for you as an admin. They can set things like do not disturb. They can set their pins for voicemail. They can change whether or not it routes to a specific cell phone number or not based on a specific schedule. They can control all that, which allows you as an admin to not have to worry about having super granular, super specific schedules and stuff like that. So you could have department-based schedules and stuff as well. They can set their own PTO, their own out of office, and it is a cloud service, so it requires no connection to the corporate network because it just needs to be able to connect to Webex. And then Control Hub also does provide the analytics for Webex calling right within it as well. Now, I wanted to talk about a few things on the roadmap. Some of them I can't talk about, which is my last bullet point at the bottom for NDA. But that second admin site, the Call Admin Portal, a lot of those features are going to be merged into Webex Control Hub. Then we also have the elimination of that end user portal that I talked about. So that one eventually will go away and pulled right into the settings.webex.com. So if you have Webex today, your end users have access to that, and this will also be residing right there. Some of the features are also getting some enhancements over the next few months as well to further be consistent with what's on-prem. So your users, as you migrate from prem to cloud, the learning curve is very significantly reduced. And then there's also some serious enhancements with bulk edition. I also didn't put on here APIs, but there's some amount of APIs that are coming out, and bulk admin is all coming out in the next few months. There's further global expansion above and beyond what I showed you before. And then there's also going to be some ICE deployments and stuff like that that will happen. So originally I talked to you about the fact that a phone, you pick it up off hook and it goes to the cloud, and then it routes back down. So you have two call legs going to the same location in theory. That will be a thing of the past very soon. So how do you get your hands on this? How do I buy? There's the Flex plan available. And this is what Cisco recommends. This is what SMP recommends. What you do is you basically would license based on knowledge workers or by named users, depending on your scale. And then you get the licensing for everything. You'll get all the group features, auto tenant hunt groups. There's no sub-licensing underneath that. You get the ability to have shared lines, mobile to desktop clients, and then your common area of licensing, most of it's included. And if you need more, you can buy more at a significant discount. Webex Teams, the chat service, business messaging service that we talked about, that comes included by default. And then there's also additional add-ons like Webex meetings. If you want physical phones or headsets, they're available. And there's also Cisco video devices, which all this stuff acts cohesively as one platform. Makes life a lot easier for you as an admin or for your IT as an admin. So why should we look at Cisco? There's a lot of other vendors out there in the cloud space. So why Cisco? There's a few different things that I want to point out here. First of all, Cisco has acquired BroadSoft, which is the foundation for a lot of Webex Calling. And Webex Calling currently and Cisco combined have 61% of the global cloud market share. So any of the other competitors that you're talking about, you stack them all together and you still have less than what Cisco has to offer right now. This Webex Calling platform has been built off of BroadSoft, of course, but it's also built off Cisco's pedigree as a 20-year market leader in collaboration. So they're the #1 market share leader. They have 45% of cloud, or 45% of prem, 61% of cloud, 54% of video devices, and 53% of the meetings market share. So when you look at the fact that you got 93 million IP phones and 30 million cloud calling users, it's there. Cisco's there for the long haul. They have the ability to do research and development that's unrivaled from any other vendor. So if you want to make sure that your vendor can weather the storm, so to speak, that is 2020 and 2021, Cisco's there for the long haul. So that's why Cisco. And if you have Cisco today, moving off of Cisco would rock your world a little bit. Moving into the Webex cloud, the whole point is to make things easier on you as an organization, allow you to be more agile, while simultaneously not having to destroy everything that you've built over the time with your existing premise solution. So if you have Call Manager and are interested in migration, this is a bit of a eye chart. Feel free, screenshot it. You're more than welcome to. If you have a Call Manager and you're interested in migration, these are some of the starting places. This is not a complete unabridged list of things that I would be looking at, but just be aware if you want to front load them and have them ready for me or ready for my team, feel free. These are items that are very important. So first off, we're going to need licensing screenshots. Depending on where you are with Call Manager, it depends on where you get your licensing screenshots. But we need one of that. If you need us to walk through or take any of these snapshots, we can certainly do that too. I do it all the time. From your Call Manager, what we really need to do is see application users. The reason why is we want to make sure that any of the integrations that are there on your Call Manager are preserved or are moved to a new solution, depending on what they are. And then we also need to know your gateways. So your actual voice gateways are important. And all I'm looking for is screenshots on those. When we get into your actual voice gateways, though, if you could have your guys do what's called a show tech, and basically it will run every single command on the gateway at one time, and we'll you know, there's a few different things that I'm actually looking for, but I like to get people one command as opposed to multiple. And that will allow us to make sure that we know the iOS version of that router is supported. The licensing is where it needs to be to support the Webex calling, and then any interface modules that are installed. And if you have an older version of a Cisco router, like an ISR G1, the 1800, 28, 3800s, or the G2s, the 1900s, 29 or 3900s, those will not work with this platform because of a lot of different reasons. They already have an end of life against them. But if you can get me that show tech, I can make sure that we get you a comparable ISR in the 4000 series if that's the way you want to go. Or we can go to a virtual router, or we can look at a cloud migration. And next up will be a topology map. So it really helps us there. If you're already an SMP customer, more than likely we already have it. If you're not an SMP customer or we're not in your collaboration solution, it just makes it even easier. And then if your SmartNet is currently not owned by SMP, getting a letter of authorization allows us to get ahead of everything else, and allows me to get a quote to you faster. And then a couple other things that are also encouraged is the Webex bills, if you have Webex today, or any other third-party meeting solutions, if you're looking at moving everything to Webex and getting the power of the platform. By doing that, I can help be able to show you actual true hard cost savings or cost deltas. And then lastly, the phone bills, which is extremely helpful because we've found a lot of people, some of their phone bills are so expensive, we've been able to completely afford the entire migration to the cloud just by moving your actual solution from being an on-premise, older analog connection or PRI and moving it into the cloud, right? So these are a couple examples of things that I found as I talk to customers. These are things that I want to know from day one. There's more on this list, but again, take a screenshot of that. Feel free to run those reports. We can run them on your behalf, but this makes life a little bit easier as we look at trying to get a quote to you as fast as possible, or trying to look at any possible gotchas out there. If you're not a Cisco customer today, same thing that we're really looking for would be a license screenshot. We could probably get you some really good trading credit for your non-Cisco phone system. And one of the things that I need is a license screenshot for that. And then any other third-party integrations that you would like to maintain. We would like to know those as well to make sure that we can migrate them over to the cloud without an issue or provide you a comparable solution. And then same thing with PSTN. What are they today? What are your PSTN connections today? Are you looking for any changes in the future? We recommend a phone bill. That helps. And then the topology map is still consistent. And then also encouraged, again, Webex bills or third-party meeting solution out there. Very helpful. That really helps us be able to really put together a real package for you or your leadership to be able to show you not just all the benefits that you're going to get, but also the cost savings and reductions that will be available to you. So in closing, we're going to ship this one over to Sean Wilson. Very timely, Sean. Thanks for hopping on. And Sean's going to take you the rest of the way. You're muted right now, Sean.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep.
Share out my screen. Okay, so thanks, Dan, for the intro. To wrap up everything that Dan was alluding to with our Webex calling offering, all right, I think it's really important for folks to know that this is a statement from Gartner and very evident that organizations will never really be focused on premise-based systems anymore, all right? The cloud calling platforms are mature, okay? They are secure, they are priced right, and offer all the same capabilities and then some now of that of an enterprise-based system. So 90% of IT leaders will not purchase new and on-premise based UC infrastructure by 2021 is a statement from Gartner, and there's many other industry analysts putting the same types of statistics out there. So what are 5 business reasons to move collaboration to the cloud? It aligns perfectly with Dan's talk track throughout the session today. But first and foremost, increase agility. All right. Not only did the pandemic really force new ways of working and remote work upon us, but leveraging the cloud for your calling and collaboration capabilities is going to make you far more agile with simplicity, scalability, and the flexibility and speed that you need. Another wonderful benefit is it allows you to stay current. The operational overhead of taking care of a premise-based unified communications platform is a lot at the end of the day. It requires specialized skill sets and somebody who understands that specific system. Additionally, keeping it up to date prevents tremendous challenges, okay? Let alone remaining secure and compliant with today's standards. Just keeping it up to date from a bug, right, and traditional vulnerability perspective can be a big lift, all right? So always staying current and having the vendor in the private cloud side of things manage this on your behalf is invaluable. You can and will reduce total cost of ownership, all right? As with any migration to a new platform, if you're going from premise to cloud, there's typically probably an upfront cost, right, to get you there from a services perspective. But overall, the ROI is there, and SMP is an expert in showing you what that ROI is and how quickly you can get there. It will raise productivity, all right? When you think of the agility side of being able to move in and out of office space, cafes, whatever it may be, in your home, you will increase productivity because it's an always-on service in your collaboration services. Those that you use from calling, messaging, meetings, video, whatever it may be, are extended regardless of where you are because it is delivered via the cloud, okay? And then lastly, adding intelligence, okay? So artificial intelligence, machine learning, all those things that create a cognitive collaboration experience today with Cisco is really only available via the cloud, right? That's where the development efforts are. That's where they can be far more dynamic. And that's where in an agile methodology, they can quickly improve upon the intelligence offerings at your disposal. Okay, so, really to summarize all this, there's 5 business benefits that we always talk to our clients to, right? When we're talking to them about new next generation solutions, and cloud collaboration brings several of those to light. Just to speak to Cisco specifically, the one that we really would like you to hone in on here is really not only do they have 45% of the on-premise calling share and continue to be the #1 in the collaboration market share overall, they have 61% of the cloud calling market share. Webex Cloud Calling, at the end of the day, is a new brand, okay, of a telephony platform that has been around for a very, very long time. A global platform with breadth, all right? And Cisco's market share from a cloud calling perspective stems from the Webex calling market share that they have in their traditional hosted collaboration services and communications manager in the cloud, all right? Still the only vendor in the industry that has an end-to-end play across all things collab, right, from a unified perspective, right? So Cisco still has an incredible story here, and the Webex calling platform is ready for you. So what do we have to offer at the end of the day? To get started, we can offer a free 90-day trial, all right, that you can take advantage of. We've done several of these to date, all right? So you guys can actually familiarize yourself with the platform and see how it aligns to where you're going. Included in the trial are all the calling services that you would get with a fully paid license, okay? It also includes Cisco Webex Teams for workstream messaging and team collaboration, along with the Webex calling application itself, right? So for things like soft phone capabilities. Cisco IP phones can be loaned out in limited quantities, depending on what the requirements are, and we can get you trial PSTN services at no cost as well. There's no committed minimum value or contract terms as a part of this trial. SMP will help you get it stood up, all right, and get you operational. This can happen very, very quickly, right? And you can truly test the platform to see if it's going to work out for you. We're sure it will. From a second offering that we have, and it aligns very, very nicely with the trial at the end of the day, is a collaboration assessment and roadmap session. All right, this is an offer that's conducted by SMP and includes the following. We will come in and assess your existing voice and telecommunications platform, along with looking at the network itself and how that's configured and architected. We'll take a look at your PSTN services from both the carrier perspective and including utilization and the likes. We'll take a look at your vendor support contracts, all right? What do you have today that is still under support, right? And what is the longevity of that contract? What would it look like if you're an existing Cisco customer to move to the subscription-based services offered in the cloud? We will also take you through the activities required to move to cloud, inclusive of any architectural changes required on the network side. And as I mentioned earlier, we will put together an ROI that's associated to migrating to the cloud itself, which ends up being one of the biggest things that folks are looking for. Proof of concepts on the latest cloud collaboration technologies with SMP and Cisco's technology, all right, is also a part of this. In the event that there is any follow-on purchase of any Cisco collaboration applications or workloads within 6 months, you can get up to 100% credit on this assessment. All right, so all of the services that go into this, so our workshops and all of the deliverables that come out of it, all right, can be 100% refunded with any follow-on purchase. And then to build on that, we're adding a new SMP offer. Okay, and this new SMP offer for, again, any follow-on purchase of Webex Calling itself is the outcome of a trial or the assessment itself. All right, we will provide up to 100% discounting on up to 25 phones and 25 headsets along with that. And just to put that out there, it's around a $15,000 value. Okay, so that's what we had to go through today. SMP is very, very excited about the opportunity to have additional discussions around Cisco's Cloud Calling story. And please take time to fill out the survey that will follow this session. It gives us insights on how you feel the content was, how we can continue to get better, all right? And then there's a few specifics around what you have from an install-based perspective today, and if you have any interest in follow-up discussions around the assessments or the offers themselves.